What's up everybody, my name's Seth and today I'm going to be showing you how I made the Steve Vai-inspired lead preset I used on the video comparing this Ibanez Pia to my friend's Ibanez JEM. If you want a quick reminder of what that preset sounded like, here it is. Before I get started diving into the preset, I just want to make a few quick points for everybody that's watching. First of all, this preset is inspired by Steve Vai in the sense that it's using a lot of gear that Steve Vai is famous for using, but it is by no means an attempt to directly recreate any of the tones that he's had on any of his songs or albums. Secondly, the preset does rely on the use of third-party IRs, specifically the York Audio Friedman cab pack, which is honestly a fantastic pack, and if you don't own it, you definitely should pick it up. I'm not being paid to say that or anything. I just really love all of York Audio's products. A third thing I should mention is that this preset was originally created on an older version of the XFX3 firmware, so it's not going to sound exactly the same as it did back then, but I've tried to do my best to tweak the preset accordingly to get as close to that sound as possible, and I'll show you the differences between the original version and how I've tweaked it now. With all that stuff out of the way, let's go over to Axe Edit and I'll actually show you everything that's going on in that preset. All right, so here we are in Axe Edit. As you can see, this preset is pretty simple in terms of the layout, so we're just gonna go from left to right and I'll walk you through each block and how it's set up. So we'll start with this drive block here. I'm using the Boss DS1 distortion, which is a pedal that Steve Vai is very famous for using. On this particular preset, I've got the distortion set at 3.25, the tone at 1.25, and the level at 5. When I originally made this patch, when I was doing the JEM and Pia comparison video, I was playing over a backing track that I made that was very, very synth heavy, and the synths were very dense, so I needed it to cut a lot more. So when I made that video, I actually had the tone sitting around 5 or 6, and the distortion was considerably lower on this drive block to kind of compensate for the tone being as high as it was. When I'm not playing over synthesizers, I find that the tone being that high kind of makes things a little bit too chirpy, and I don't really find it all that pleasant. So for general use, I prefer it dialed like this, where the distortion is a little bit higher and the tone is very close to being off almost, because without that, like I said, you'll get great pick definition, but it's at the expense of kind of giving you these weird chirpy artifacts. Now, for the amp, I'm using the Carvin Legacy 100, or the Legend 100, as it's known in the XFX. This is a model of Steve Vai's signature amplifier. So the settings are just as you see here: gain at 6.32, bass at 3.86, mids at 4.71, treble and presence are both at 8, and the master volume is at 6.86. As far as how I came to these particular settings, I actually started by going to the XFX wiki and looking at the entries about the Legend 100 models, and lo and behold, they actually had info on Steve Vai's personal amp settings, so that's where I ended up starting. What I found was that with the Pia especially, because these pickups are so bass heavy, having the bass as high as Steve Vai likes it was a little bit too much for me. The low end kind of starts to overtake everything really quickly with the bass that high, and this is already kind of a bass heavy amp in my personal opinion. And having the mids bumped up just a little bit gives the guitar a bit more cut in a pleasant way without giving you ice picks to the ears. I also ended up lowering the gain a little bit just because I felt like that balanced a little bit better with how I have the DS1 set now. Moving on to the cab section, as I mentioned before, I'm using York Audio IRs, specifically ones from the Friedman cab pack, and just going from left to right, we've got a 57 and a 121, classic combination. I threw in the U47 just to add a little bit more thickness, even though honestly I could probably have gotten away with not using it, but I did like what it was doing for the sound. Where things get really interesting is with this rear IR. So essentially what this is, as the name suggests, a microphone placed at the rear of the cabinet, and this is picking up a ton of low-end information. Now, I want to show you guys what this is doing. I don't know if it's going to come across after YouTube compression and all that stuff, but I'm going to bypass the delay block because the delay kind of hides a lot of stuff. and I'm going to mute this IR and I'm going to bring it back in to see if you guys can kind of hear what it's doing. To me, it's adding a little bit more fullness to the sound without things getting too boomy and washed out. But again, hopefully that comes across on YouTube. I hope you guys were able to hear the difference between those two clips. I know after things get uploaded to YouTube, it's sometimes really difficult to hear subtle audio differences. So again, pretty much all this is doing is it's adding a little bit of fullness to the sound, but in a very pleasing way that makes it so the bass doesn't get out of control, at least the way that I have it set up right now. If I move on to the preamp section, since that's really the only section of the cab block other than the cabs themselves that I made any changes to, I've got the low cut up at 150 Hertz since this is a lead patch. We don't really need low end information under 150 Hertz. Got the low cut slope pretty high at 24 dB per octave. And the high cut, I set it to 10,000 just to get rid of some of that fizziness that you can get up top with a 57 mic, since that's kind of the dominant mic in the cab block. As far as post-amp effects, really the only two things I ended up using were the delay and the reverb, so let's just start with the delay. I'm using the 2290, I set the tempo to a dotted eighth note, and I increased the feedback a little bit to 43.6. Then finally, I just kind of adjusted the mix to taste, and it looks like I landed at 18.9%. For the reverb, I'm almost positive I'm using just the stock rich hall type. I don't think I made any adjustments to anything in this section. Then I just adjusted the mix and landed on 12.9%. But yeah, that's pretty much the full preset with all the numbers and values out of the way. Let's move on to some actual playing examples of what this preset sounds like. Well, I think that does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, maybe consider liking it if you haven't done so already. And if you're interested in seeing me do this for any of the other tones I've dialed in on this channel, let me know in that comment section down below. I'd be more than happy to kind of walk you through any of the presets that I've made so far. Again, thank you all so much for watching my videos. It really means a lot to me. Take care. Hope to see you again next time.